Good evening. I had a very vague idea about what is a prehistory, but after listening to him, I understood that as a common person or a common reader, I was basically obsessed with a human curiosity to know our past. Human mind is always curious to know what is in the past, and in the present context, most of us wants to know our past in search of identity. In a formal days in the schools and colleges, most of us are not interested in a history. Prehistory is a very uh, technical and specialized kind of a thing. But even in a history, we are not interested. As we grow old, most of us in this group are, I can see elderly people. As we grow old, naturally, yes, our curiosity about the past, it increases. As the present speaker has made it very clear, on that map of the world, India has always served as a major corridor for migrations. Maybe later invasions, but initially the migrations. And these migrations has made us, all of us, who are now here sitting or on this planet. Now, if you're talking about Goa particularly or India, what we are today, it's definitely a hybrid mix, genetically, culturally, and even linguistically, because linguistic is an important subject for Goa. It's all hybrid mix. I mean, any search for a purity, in most of us will do that even now. It's all elusive. He never said that, but I can draw from his conclusions. But then the question comes, not on prehistory I am on history. Why history matters? And why we should study history? If you ask me, when I was sitting there, if somebody asked me, you come for this lecture, after listening to his lecture, whether I will be curious to read some basic books on a prehistory, and why we should do that? Now, that's a common question for me. Normally, for history, not on a prehistory, a general perception, the general expectation of people is, if you study history, it can help you to understand your mistakes in the present, or it can give you some lessons for the present. But again, there is a problem. The major philosophers, and one of the philosophers, most of us, you may know, Hegel, or the German philosopher, he said it very clearly. The only lesson what we learn from the history is that we don't learn anything at all. We keep on repeating the mistakes. And the most important thinker, political thinker, Marx said that we repeat our mistakes first as a tragedy and then as a farce. In historical sense, Marx was one of the major political thinker, but he also interpreted history. And while interpreting history, he followed a method. I'm not talking the method which they are following in archaeology. In social science, what he followed a method, that method, understanding events of a long time, why this happened. Now that method influenced both Europe, America, and even our Indian historians. They have adopted that method, and I personally feel that method and Marx as a philosopher, historical thinker, is still relevant while understanding the history. Second question comes is, and that's very critical for the modern times now, a lot of people feel that studying history gives us some identity. Because why many people have come for today's lecture? Because they were curious to know who were the original people who were there in Goa. Somebody asked that question also. So history always gives the identity. There was one, our famous historian from Pune, where the present speaker studied in Deccan College, Shezwalkar. Now, Shezwalkar said in his own times that particularly the people from his region, from Maharashtra, they are possessed like a devil when they are talking about history. And that's a normal description of people from a Pune and adjoining area, that area. That although they are staying in the present times, they are always obsessed with the past. And they always proudly say that we don't have only geography, we have history also. That is their own pride in their own history. But this history which gives you identity, that has not come from a scholarly, or what Vidya Kamath said, academic history. This has come, I am from Maharashtra, close to Pune. These are this kind of history which has come from a fiction, theatre, film, and even myths. Now, the kind of history we studied when I was a student, particularly the medieval history, about Shivaji we wanted to know. I read a novel, a fiction by Sriman Yogi. I mean, that was my first understanding of Shivaji. Sambhaji I wanted to read, then there was another Shivaji Savant's Chhawa. Probably some part of Goa also must have read that. I mean, these are the areas, and theatre also subsequently shaped a lot of our popular ideas about medieval history. Now tomorrow there is a show at Madgaon, Ravindra Bhavan, Raigedla Jeva Jaag Yete. Now after so many years, this must have, Raigedla Jeva Jaag Yete must be a 50 years old theatre. Still people are watching that. It's not just a history, but it's a father and son relation. So that is a perennial and a classic relation. But still, history in a popular sense, we are preoccupied, and in that process what happens is we always try to appropriate history in the present political and social context, and that creates several problems in the age of digital technology, where most of our knowledge, not only about history, about medicine, about environment, that comes from a Facebook and WhatsApp. That kind of a place, a lot of people carry a lot of ideas about historical things. Not prehistory is not part of that conversation, but there many times, as our civilization is a mythical in nature, and the Center Study of Mythology and Culture, basically they have organized several good lectures. I have been associated with them, and I have been attending also those lectures. Many a times, not in those lectures, but outside I see a lot of people who are associated academically also, they convert myths into history. And that becomes a problem. I personally feel, those people who grew up along with me, we studied together in Bombay and all, when we meet at this age, most of us have retired. Now, earlier when we used to meet, we used to discuss about certain topics in history. What were those topics when I was in Bombay? We always used to discuss why Buddhism has declined in India. It flourished the rest of the world and it declined in India. Who were these Harappan people? Were they original people from India, or they were also part of migrations? No, these things are little bit very clear. Recently a book came. It's edited by Ganesh Devi, Tony Joseph, and the present speaker, Indian. Now, that book has a lot of small essays. Last year only it came. And that they made it very clear that Harappans also were a part of a migration, and they came from Iran. And because of the environmental and drought conditions, they spread both north as well as the south. So they were the real forefathers of Indians. At least there are essays in that book, they say it clearly, and that makes sense. Students' days, we always used to talk about these subjects. All that I am saying is, our relationship with the past keeps on changing with the evidence. Not only the prehistory, but the history also, because there are a lot of gaps. We don't have a continuous and concrete evidence for most of the things. We fill that those gaps by imagination, and many times instead of remaining silent, we use your imagination more. And the kind of imagination where even our university people who use their imagination, uh, there are a lot of conscious, unconscious biases and prejudice which play a human role. That's how the human mind works. And they fill their gaps with that. And that really creates a problem for common people. But moreover, why we study history or prehistory, in a later age, I find that studying history, like studying literature or watching a film or watching a theater, gives you some kind of a enjoyment. Because your mind is always curious to know what happened in the past. And studying all these kinds of references do help us, do enriches us, and that is a part of our creative mind and a general enjoyment in a art, culture, and a myth. Thank you.